Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. Quick reminder, as always, support the podcast. And the best way you can do that is by becoming a paid subscriber on the Substack. I do a weekly analysis of the news and arrange every week or two off-the-record Zoom calls with supporters where we can discuss world events. You can donate, donor box, crypto. That's all over at the website. Consult with me if you like. And do check out all of my affiliates. My exclusive sponsor this month is the Expat Money Online Summit, expatmoneysummit.com. It's a free live stream, so you can just go hop over to the website, register your email. I'll be participating in one of the VIP panels. There's going to be a host of speakers, including Doug Casey and others. And if you want access to the VIP panels as well as the lifetime replays and other perks, you can use the code EMPIRE. You'll get 20% off. Returning to the transmission, it's been a while. Michael Rectenwald of michaelrectenwald.com. He's a prolific author, over a dozen books, professor, and now founder of the Anti-Zionist America PAC, AZAPAC. Welcome back, Michael.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, we're just, before we hit record, reminiscing on how we hung out. It was 2 years ago in 2023 in LA at the American Freedom Alliance conference, which was a lot of fun, although a bit of a neoconish event, it turned out. And you've gone through a bit of a metamorphosis with your focus from what I can see. You know, a lot of us know your backstory from Marxist professor to libertarian champion who ran for president as Libertarian Party candidate. And you've focused on Great Reset, technocratic globalism, to now focusing on Zionism with your founding of AZAPAC. Could you tell us a bit about the pivot to your latest direction?
Yeah. So, look, I must admit that the ongoing onslaught in Gaza has had a lot to do with my kind of it's not really a metamorphosis, but my development. I should put it that way, and that I saw the ongoing genocidal Israel undertaking, its atrocities and crimes against humanity, and it disturbs me. It continues to disturb me greatly. And then I saw that the Trump administration is effectively a kind of Zio puppetry. It's under complete Zionist control. This is very clear in everything that's happened over the past 9 months. And I realized that, look, the Zionism is really the deep state in the United States. And that until we get rid of this particular infiltration of the U.S. government and our political class entirely, then we're going to be hostage to this rogue state and their imperatives. And so I first considered a party, like an anti-Zionist party, America Party, AZAP, which kind of reminded me of ASAP, like we need this, hurry up. And but knowing from having experience with the Libertarian Party and everything else about third parties in the United States, I know that this is not possible. You really can't have a third party in the United States. It'll never get anywhere. The system is set up to quash any such political manifestation. So I started thinking maybe a PAC would be the way to go, and that would be to help fund and promote anti-Zionist candidates so that we can replace the Zionist leadership that we have in the United States. And it's very deep. It's penetrated to all, not just the Congress and the Senate and the presidency and so forth, but the entire bureaucratic state seems to be under their control. But that can't be changed unless we change elected representatives. And on that score, it occurred to me that unless we end the Zionist occupation in the United States, there's no hope for the people of Palestine. There's no hope for others in the region to avoid the bombing campaigns that Israel does indiscriminately. It seems 9 countries in 1 week it was. And So AZAPAC is founded to try to counter this Zionist infiltration, and we're going to do it through candidates, but also propaganda in a neutral sense of the term, to try to educate the American public about how deep this infiltration and control is, and to try to overthrow it, at least through electoral and educative means.
How far back would you go to point out I think previously you've called it the hijacking, this infiltration of Zionism? And, I think we should make clear, any form of infiltration, whether it's, Chinese,
Exactly.
foreign money influence or whatnot, is not good for any sovereign country. We had some files declassified recently related to the JFK assassination, and there was one in particular talking about James Angleton and how he basically was working with a Zionist Israeli. I forget the details, but so that showed that the CIA had been compromised. We got that whole story with JFK and the nuclear weapons Dimona reactor. So how far back would you go to put a marker of how this came to be, this Zionist influence?
That's a great question. Some people would say it goes back to 1913 and the Federal Reserve and so forth. I don't know. I think what we're seeing now is the mask has come off. There was always some influence, certainly, and some control by APAC and other lobbies. But I think that under the Trump administration, it's become a full-scale, mask-off barrage. And never before have I seen the U.S. government become so blatantly and overtly obsequious to the interests of Israel and the people that promote it. So I would probably say it's decades in the coming, but this particular administration, surprisingly, actually, to me, I was a bit stunned actually by the level of sort of servility that this government has sunk to in connection with Israel. And you're right. If it was China, I would be saying the same thing, and I would have found an anti CP, Communist Party PAC or something like that. Or if it was, say Saudi Arabia, it would be that. So it isn't specifically because it's Israel, it's because it's happening to our government, and it happens to be Zionists that are doing it. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because I don't want to be unclear about that.
And maybe just quickly, what would be for you some perhaps of the most egregious examples of Zionist policy? I'm thinking, if we think back now from where we are, hindsight 2020, the global war on terror, which is basically to remake the Middle East in support of Israel, to today now they're talking about completely clearing Gaza to set up a mini technocratic state. And then I don't think it'll stop there. They want to, they're dealing with Yemen. They already dealt with Syria. They've got an Al-Qaeda commander-in-chief now. Jolani is his pen name. And then they're coming after free speech as well in the U.S. now. It's under the guise of anti-Semitism. They're going after our free speech. There was an author recently interviewed on mainstream media talking about saying all conspiracy theory is anti-Semitic. It's like, what? And then Marco Rubio talking about stripping U.S. citizens of passports, again, because of thought crime. So just, any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I had anticipated this question. Let's begin with funding. Since October 7th, of course, we know that the United States has been delivering $3.8 billion in funding, mostly military funding, to Israel for decades. But in the last, since October 7th, 2023, it's been at least, and probably a lot more, that the statisticians haven't caught up with it, $22.7 billion delivered to Israel, much of it coming after it became quite apparent that Israel was committing crimes against humanity. And many of us said was genocide. And in fact, we have many organizations, Human Rights Watch, the UN, and several others that have said this is genocide. It meets every definition. All the scholars have said so. Most of the leading genocide scholars, including several Israeli genocide scholars who admitted it rather, shall I say, reluctantly. And but the arrest of students was a very foreboding sign. Student protesters, some of them actually residents of the United States, who they attempted to deport for anti-Semitism or anti-Israel speech. Just unbelievable. And we saw one college student who had co-authored an op-ed arrested on the street by ICE simply for co-authoring an op-ed criticizing Israel. I mean, this is unbelievable. And then, as you said, they're floating bills like crazy, like, anti-BDS legislation was snuck into the NDAA recently. That legislation makes it illegal to boycott Israel, at least for anybody that is associated with major institutions that are doing so. So, I mean, how do you approve that? And then you mentioned the bill that I think it was, I forget his name right now, who was trying to usher in this bill that would strip passports of American citizens for criticizing Israel. And we've seen an endless, like online, I'm sure you're very aware of this, the endless tweeting or posting on X about, kind of like, anti-Semitism constantly, Israel and their wonders. And, we have almost all of the administration doing this. Even RFK Jr., for some reason, was making these kind of tweets, although I don't understand how this relates to public health. And many others. I mean, it's just a constant barrage of scraping. And then we saw Congress, right? During their break, we saw all these congressmen shipped over to Israel for meetings with Netanyahu, in which most recently there was a display. The logo for this was 50 states, one Israel, shockingly enough, suggesting a kind of subsumption of the United States into Israel as such. And I think that particular logo is very emblematic of exactly what's happening. And then we have reports that Netanyahu is running around the Middle East saying that he has total control of Donald Trump and the United States government. And I think that's probably the only true thing he said in the last, maybe in his life, other than saying it otherwise earlier. And he said that before. Many times it's been caught on tape saying such things. The arms, the bombing of Iran at the behest of Israel, unprovoked attack. Israel's attack was unprovoked, then pretending to be in negotiations with Iran and luring them into sort of like acquiescence, or kind of like luring them into a state of passivity, and then bombing them while this so-called negotiations were supposedly happening, and then luring Hamas into negotiations in Qatar and bombing them. Israel bombed them, but for sure that the United States rubber stamped it, or at least agrees with it. I don't even think the word rubber stamp is right anymore, because I think that it's the other way around. But I think that Trump has to get permission to do anything, especially in terms of foreign affairs. And they rubber stamp what the United States does. I get into some debates with, I guess you'd call them leftists, who see it the other way. It doesn't really matter whether you see the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail. It's an imbrication that is so tight that they're almost one entity. In fact, that's the way they want to think of it. Huckabee said recently over there in this one Israel, 50 states, one Israel convention or whatever it was, that there are some 700,000 Americans living in Israel. So this makes Israel our 457th congressional district or something like this. Insanity. So there's all kinds of verbal cues plus the actions that indicate all this. And I don't think the world's safe as long as this is the case, because the U.S. has been nothing but Israel's bulldog and using its force to threaten and actually bomb Israel's neighbors and to destroy Gaza entirely. So it's been pretty blatant, and I've seen an endless stream of it. And I think anybody that's paying attention can see this too, or if they don't have blinders on, because you still have all these people saying that Islam is taking over the world, and we need to we need to fight against Islam because Islam is this, power mad religion that wants to subjugate us all and so forth. I mean, there's no indication that that's true. The indications are very clear that Zionists have control and they're exerting it.
I want to bring in the Charlie Kirk event, because that has changed the game a bit, pun intended. It's been a turning point where now you're seeing was it Hegseth and others now. They're and this is often the case in history. I believe it was a deep event, some type of false flag event to. There's a whole host of side quests here. One of them, I think, is to manufacture civil war. I think up until now, we've seen the narrative being manufactured, the movies, all that stuff. And it seems like American people are not biting yet. They're not really willing to go at each other's throats. And so they have to manufacture these events to radicalize left and right. It's also a great pretext to bring in the police state, the digital police state, and it was odd that Netanyahu and Gantz and others were so quick to tweet out their condolences, and the fact that he's going on CNN and being asked if he killed Kirk. I mean, just the fact that that's going on is kind of suspect. And so now they've created this martyrs. So authoritarian regimes in the past always use martyrs to, we've seen it in the 1930s, and now they're using Kirk for recruitment, for war in the U.S. And so just any thoughts on that event?
Yeah, I mean, all along the lines of what you're saying. To me, what it was a major event in order to deflect attention away from the growing attention by a great deal of Americans on the influence and control that Israel's exerting over our government, and to deflect it back into this left-right parrying and warfare, civil war. That was quite obvious from the start. That's why they picked this particular patsy, who I don't even think fired the shot, to be honest. I think I've seen some videos that prove that, or at least show that, well, first of all, we could say that the government story is ludicrous on its face. Everything about it is false. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Nothing fits. There is no rifle in the guy's pants as he's jumping off a roof. If there were, it would have probably stabbed him in the side, in the leg, and ripped his pants open. I mean, it's just believable. And then they didn't secure the crime scene. You have his security team doing things with the crime scene that would be completely illegal, frankly, and a lot of other oddities. So I think it is a false flag, as you put it, to redirect attention of Americans back to the left-right paradigm, because the left-right paradigm keeps attention away from the ruling class. And I think there is a ruling class. I'm not speaking in Marxist terms here now. I'm speaking in libertarian terms, actually, because libertarians were the first to actually promote or to establish a class theory. And this class theory is the state and its beneficiaries and controllers. That's who the ruling class is. And they have effectively, for the most part, gotten that MAGA crew, most of them, to go back to the left-right volleying, and to see the left as this inimical force that is tearing America apart. Whereas it's very clear that it seems to be contrived. And the story, of course, doesn't make any sense. So we're left with wondering who's behind it. And I'm not going to go so far as to say Israel's behind it. But I will say this. There are video evidence I've looked at shows different possibilities. And one of them being the probable explosion of the microphone and the likelihood that the projectile came out of this microphone, likely the battery of the microphone, which is reminiscent of the attack on Lebanon with Hezbollah and the exploding pagers. And we're told by Netanyahu that our cell phones and everything else we have, technology, is all due to Israel's wonders. And so we're left to think that, they were definitely capable, definitely would benefit from it, and would have the wherewithal to pull it off and get away with it. So I'm not saying they did it, but they're a likely suspect, in my opinion, a likely suspect.
And I'd agree with your analysis. I've seen footage that it does seem, whether I saw that today, you shared that on your X feed, that it could have easily been that, there's all this cutting edge tech, spy tech that we're unaware of, that his lapel mic could have been a weapon, or, from to the right around him, the shot would have, and that's been the modus operandi with RFK. His security guard from behind him took him out. Same thing with, JFK, on and on it goes. So it's
even RFK Jr. admitted that. He even said that in the San Francisco Chronicle. RFK Jr. said he was not shot by Sirhan at all. He was shot from behind, most likely by this newly hired security guard. And what do we have in this case? A newly hired security team who happens to be connected to Israel. So that's very curious. I found it stunning that they would do this, but I'm not surprised, because they have committed many assassinations in the recent past.
I do want to caution against a portion of my listenership and others who are going a bit woo-woo and immediately defaulting to way beyond the Overton window, where they're saying things like Charlie Kirk is still alive. He faked it. He was wearing a mask. He's in some Valhalla protection program. Like, I've heard people say, they've emailed me. They said Valhalla is some witness protection program. It's like, do you have one iota of evidence for that? There's nothing. There's no source for that. It just sounds cool. But I think we have to caution. I know you're an academic, so I taught previously, and we have to have a factual approach. And I think I would like to speak to that question, because there's a lot of, you saw Nick Fuentes poo-pooing so-called conspiracism, and let me just put it this way. A theory is not wrong for being a conspiracy theory, but it's not right for being one either. The fact is, you have to have evidence, and every theory is worth considering, at least momentarily. And they shouldn't be dismissed for being conspiracy theories. As we know very well, that language was mobilized by the CIA in the first place. Of course, they got it from Karl Popper in his book, The Open Society and Its Enemies, published in 1945, in which he talked about the conspiracy theory of society, and basically erected a straw man, essentially saying anybody that holds to the conspiracy theory of society is absolutely wrong, because there's no way that a particular contingent can be responsible for everything. And nobody ever said that. Nobody ever said that a particular contingent is responsible for everything. So he erected a straw man. I believe he actually colluded with the CIA later, because there's,
I've seen a FOIA request. I wrote about this in my penultimate book, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, in which there was a FOIA request about Karl Popper. And they wanted to know if he had any CIA connections. And the FOIA came back, we can neither affirm nor deny the existence of these documents. And this is only this kind of glomar response. Glomar only happens when either someone's privacy is at risk or national security is at stake. Well, Popper's dead, long dead, so it had to be national security. I'm led to believe that probably Popper was collaborating with the CIA. And in order to mobilize that kind of very, shall I say, what it is, it's preemptive language that destroys the interlocutor in advance so that they can't, have no credibility. Just call something a conspiracy theory or call somebody a conspiracy theorist and they're dismissed. And that's a mistake. I wrote about this in that book. I went into a great depth about the epistemological status of conspiracy theory per se. And it is epistemologically unsound to dismiss anything solely based on the idea that it's a conspiracy theory. So, but on that note, some conspiracy theories are just ridiculous. And, we can certainly have judgment to dismiss some in advance, not in advance, but upon hearing them, not because they're conspiracy theories, but because they're likely untrue. They're likely outlandish, in some cases, completely impossible. So, but anyway, I just wanted to make that point because I think, yeah.
Yeah, just finish your final thought.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, that Fuentes, who there are some conspiracy theories floating around about him right now, that he's been paid off and made a quick 180 regarding Israel and Jews, as they would put it. And but I don't want to get into that stuff because I don't care. I think it's a shame if it's true, but I also think it's a shame that he dismissed all kinds of theories or any theories and called them conspiratoids and conspiratards and autists and all this other crap in order to dismiss these people in advance, which I think is mistaken. We need to follow all the leads and see where they go.
I have seen clips of him promoting 15-minute cities, if you can believe that. And you mentioned Great Reset, but before, I do want to get an update from you on where we're at with that. But before switching to that topic, any other thing that you think is important when it comes to Zionism? AZAPAC, your latest book, a novel, I believe that you wrote, The Cabal Question. So any final thoughts there, as well as thoughts to the Zionist endgame? It seems like they're clearing out Gaza, and I think they do want to go to war actually with Iran. So they're trying to sort of mobilize support for that. I had the late Dr. Francis Boyle on a few years back, and he said the endgame was war with Russia, China, and Iran. Those are the last holdouts. So any final thoughts?
Wow. Yeah, I think that that's possible. I don't know about Russia per se, but I think Iran is definitely a major obstacle to the greater Israel project. And I think they're definitely slated for another conflict with Iran. This time, I think they'll go so far as to attempt regime change, which is what Charlie Kirk tried to talk Trump out of, regime change. I received a direct message from Charlie Kirk after I criticized one of his posts. And he was saying, let's not do regime change. We take out their nuclear facilities without it. And I said that the regime change thing was just being floated to make the bombing of Iran unprovoked look good by comparison. So it was a foil. And I never heard back from him, ever. And I couldn't now, of course. But I worked for him at one point. I did some talks for Talking Point. And I think he was a good person. He might have been mistaken about some things, but he was I think, coming around about some issues about Israel and their control, and I think he wasn't happy about it. But what else can I say about this? Well, what we're trying to do is mobilize, the American public. If we can get 50 million Americans to contribute $1 or $5, I should say, then we can compete with APAC and its other associated PACs and lobbies. If we can get, knowing that we're not going to get that many Americans to do this, if we could get 1 million Americans to donate $50, then we can compete with APAC. And this is a grassroots movement. This PAC is called an unconnected PAC. That means it is not affiliated with any party. We don't care about party affiliation at all. That's not the criteria. There's no other criteria other than Zionist influence control. And the candidate has not taken any money from any of these Israeli lobbies and will not and has not funded an armed Israel. That's our only criteria. We think it could, if there's one issue that can unite the so-called left and right, I think a false dichotomy in the first place, but nevertheless, people buy into it, so I guess it's real. It is anti-Zionism. It's the only issue that can connect the right and left. And I like to think of myself as in neither left or right circles. I don't consider myself right-wing or left-wing. People accuse me of still being a Marxist because I use class terms, but they just don't understand that the class analysis preceded Marx, and then he mutated it and distorted it big time. So, this transcends left, right, Republican, Democrat, even libertarianism, really. And I think it can unite people on those grounds.
Yeah, and I think it's good to point out we're dealing with this political philosophy of Zionism, right? It's not about the Jews; it's this particular lobby and
that's correct
interest.
I mean, there are Jewish people connected to it, of course, and Zionism effectively benefits Zionist Jews, but not all Jews by any stretch. There are many defectors and people that just they don't care. I mean, look, a lot of Jewish people born in America just don't care. They're not involved. They're not in some secret cabal. They just happen to be Jewish by birth, and that's not something anybody can avoid. And I put no stake in that. What I put stake in is this is an ideological formation with power behind it. So it's ideology that is the cohesive force here. And that's what drives this agenda. And then, of course, it has the force of money behind it. So, this isn't like an anti-Jewish creed. The organization is not a secret anti-Jewish organization. In fact, we have Jewish members on the board. So we're not, that's that now I'm going to hear from this other side that's going to say, see, he's infiltrated, and now these people are firmly anti-Zionist. Look, if Max Blumenthal wanted to join our board, do you think I would say no? That's ridiculous. He's one of the most stringent and strident anti-Zionists living. And so I don't hold his, Jewish birth or, against them. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, then to segue to one of my favorite topics, unfortunately, you mentioned your book, The Great Reset and the Struggle for Liberty, Unraveling the Global Agenda. I've got a copy, I believe, on my Kindle. And just to get your sort of update, because the technocracy, whatever you want to call it, is unrelentingly moving forward. The walls are closing in every country. Digital IDs, in Mexico, a month ago, they passed the biometric CURP law, which is effectively the digital ID for Mexico. You're seeing it happen everywhere. Another part of the segue is TikTok recently being bought by these Zionist billionaires, right? Larry Ellison of Oracle. I forget who else was involved. And then you've got Palantir, basically is
Right.
becoming a Palantir world order. Peter Thiel, Alex Karp, they've got their hands all over the place. The stuff that Israel is being used, that Israel is using in Gaza, the lavender, the AI kill lists, all this crazy stuff, which I think is one of the prototypes for this stuff. The laboratories is Gaza, is Ukraine, is China, and then that stuff's going to go global for this global totalitarian world state, and then be used to control us. So, just where are we at when it comes to this one world totalitarian state?
Well, what I see happening is unbelievably, I guess, or not so much so, but ironically, at least, it's coming in and it's being ushered under Trump in the United States. And it's coming through Palantir and their Gotham system. And then there's another predictive programming software that's going to be affiliated with it, whose name is escaping me at this moment.
Maybe Foundry?
But this is kind of, it also begins with a G, like Gotham, but it's predictive, like policing. It's kind of like pre-crime. It's like the pre-crime in Minority Report. They will be able to anticipate people's behavior and preempt it by virtue of making stops or arrests and things like this. I think it's coming in through Palantir mostly, and the software that's being used in Palestine is going to be used in the United States. That software, it uses facial recognition. It connects all the data about a person, all the government data and everything else they can find to create a digital profile. And that's effectively a digital ID. And so the digital ID will come in through the Palantir Panopticon, as I call it. And the Palantir Panopticon will be a surveillance state and connected with this pre-crime software, a kind of a sort of Minority Report contrivance, and all that is really the Great Reset. That's the technological component of the Great Reset right there. These fourth industrial revolution technologies, digital ID, and I think in terms of the CBDC element, I think it's happening through it'll happen through stablecoin. And that's going to be pegged to the dollar, and that's programmable money. Now, some people would say, well, money's already programmable. I agree it is. But this would make all the transactions programmable. And that means your money could be blocked from going certain places, and it could be taken from you by virtue of whatever. The money will be totally digitized and programmable, very much like the CBDC. So it's just happening with stablecoin. They just use these private-public partnerships to undertake what the state would do by itself. And then they say, well, it's not the state, it's not the government, it's actually these corporations. Well, the corporations are effectively apparatuses of the state. I've called them governmentalities to describe the relationship between these kind of corporations and their governmental functions. And that's what Palantir will be doing. So we're on the brink of it. And once that happens, then really, we're not talking just about censorship. We're talking about surveillance. We're talking about elimination of ideas from the marketplace of ideas, and a control grid of epic proportions.
And I just came to mind, the peaceful unpersoning of people, so they won't necessarily have to dispatch Gestapo to send you to a physical camp or to disappear you. They just peacefully unperson you, and you no longer can participate in society. Imagine, I always just imagine the scenario. I'm sitting here at home, my internet access is cut. I can't buy food. I can't drive my car. It's taken away. I can't use the public transport. Uber bans me, Airbnb bans me, and it's effectively, you cannot do anything. And so, just any further thought? And I
predicted this in my book, the Google Archipelago, the Digital Gulag, and the Simulation of Freedom. And this is just in non-physical disappearance of people, like they did in the Gulag system, who disappeared literally. Now you just all they have to do is dispense with your digital self, and your physical self is beyond handicapped. It's beyond words. They could just obliterate your social being effectively. So yeah.
What then, in the face of that, I don't have answers to solutions. It's just like, what is to be done?
Well, I did have a 9-step plan for the resisting the Great Reset at the end of that book. And look at some of that stuff. It's refusing. It was one of the first, the very first point was to refuse CBDC, but now we've got to refuse stablecoin. And then we need to look at, some of the other planks of that program. Some of them had to do with the social credit scoring system that comes through the fourth industrial revolution technologies. All that stuff has to be resisted, certainly. To be put it blankly, you certainly don't allow any implants into your body. This is pretty obvious, but that may not even be necessary. So, in fact, they could use nanobots, and you breathe them in, and all of a sudden your brain is hijacked. That's very possible, actually. I know it sounds ludicrous, but it's true. I mean, these things exist, and I've seen military generals and so forth display this technology. They have it. So, I'd have to revisit those 9 points that I looked at before and revise them based on developments.
Yeah, and someone recently was on Twitter saying, do not get the real ID, don't get the digital ID. Starmer just yesterday announced that all Britons now will have to get digital ID, and the biggest obstacle I find are the masses, and they always buy in. Regime gets the critical mass of lemmings to buy in, and then the rest of us are screwed. I do want to bring this up. I think we've talked about this in the past, but I find it important because I keep seeing in alternative media and elsewhere people talking about, China and BRICS and multipolarity. And I'm just thinking, some people go to China and they say, look, there's no social credit here. It's like, it's everywhere. It's, the Chinese government, I read the official Chinese government website, which talks about the social credit system. So maybe it's not as visible, but it's there in the background as it is in the rest of the world. And I shared the article just a few days ago. I mean, China is it unveiled a new program for world government. I forget the exact name, the Global Security Initiative, and they've got a few others. And so it's like, there's no good guys here. They're all on board. It's just, lately I've been get it to saying it's basically choose your gulag. We get to decorate our prison effect. So you want it like the Chinese Buddhist design? You want it with the American design, or Russian, or whatever, or EU? So just any thoughts on the whole China BRICS?
Yeah, I think that's true. Look, I'm not discounting China's global ambitions. I think they're real, and we may have competing hegemonies going at it, but I don't think China's really in the game for taking over the world. I don't think. I mean, they may be in the game for it, but they aren't capable because of the Zionist hegemony that we're under, and I don't think anything is going to defeat that unless we defeat it directly. So that's why I founded AZAPAC, just to go back to that.
And I know it's early in the game with AZAPAC. Do you have any fears of being debanked or delifed, assassinated?
Yeah, I've had fears about that. Yeah. In fact, for the first few months here, I've been a moving target, basically traveling to keep out of, make sure I'm not in the same place all the time. I don't think that we're a threat yet. So I don't think they're not coming after us at this point. If we start getting, 1 million Americans contributing $50, yeah, they'll come after us. But that's to be expected. And we'll have security ready for that. Hopefully they won't kill us. But, the security, that is. Yeah, I mean, I obviously that's a concern. But right now it hasn't been, there's no materialization. I'm not gonna prevaricate about that. It's not happening right now.
You haven't hit that threshold yet. Well,
no.
We've covered a lot. Anything else that I haven't brought up that you think is important to get across, as well as the.
Well, you might want to. You mentioned my book, The Cabal Question. It's a novel. It's a very good novel, I think, and take a look at it. That's all I'll say.
And as always, the links are in the description. But where are the best places for people to go? And then if they want to support these projects, like your books or AZAPAC,
okay, for AZAPAC, it's aza-pac.com, or just put in AZAPAC. Right now, we are still number one when you search AZAPAC, AZAPAC. We'll come right up as the top element. And so Google hasn't got us yet either. So that's good. And then my website, michaelrectenwald.com. And I do a lot of Substack too, which is mrectenwald.substack.com.
All right. All those links are in the description. I've been de-Googled, so you type in Geopolitics and Empire, doesn't appear on Google. So eventually you'll probably get there. Well, thanks for coming back on. Stay alive, Michael.
Thanks. Will do. Thank you. Take care now. Nice talking to you.